Okay, so this is the July 30th, 2021 meeting of the ROS Tooling Working Group. Please feel free to toss your attendance on here. Got a few folks who dialed in. Anybody who hasn't been with us before, Adrian, I'm not sure if you actually joined us in previous working group meetings.
Hey,
Let me
no,
get
this
this. Sorry, let me get the chime screen off the shared screen so that that's super distracting. Okay, sorry about that. There we go.
First time joining this meeting. I'm not sure. Hi, if anyone. A couple of familiar people from yesterday.
Yeah, do we have anyone else in here that's going to the WebTools working groups? I don't know if anyone else on this call has been.
Okay.
But Adrian's from Foxglove, which is a web-based ROS tool suite, and he's been leading a lot of the conversations in the WebTools working group, which has been, I think, quite valuable so far.
Yeah, just that I would join this one. I think John from our team came a couple of weeks ago, maybe. But
yes, I believe so.
I don't know. I'm generally passionate about developer tools and developer workflows, so I thought this would be an interesting group to sit in on.
Primary focus has been ROSBag, but I'm always happy to talk about other tools in the ecosystem as well. It turns out that's a reasonably big project, so it takes up a lot of time.
Yeah. What about Colcon and like the whole and ROSDEP and like the build system? Where does that get discussed?
There isn't a working group where that stuff gets talked about. And we have thought about that, talked about that in here a bit, where there's almost in the charter for this working group of tooling, it kind of falls across two boundaries. On one side, you've got like application level tooling, like ROSBag, RQt, RViz, and then you've got developer tools, which is Colcon, ROSDEP, maybe Amit, the build system kind of counts for it, and then we're maintaining GitHub Actions that people can plug into their repositories to do builds. And so the majority of our conversations in here have been about ROSBag and about those GitHub Actions. That's what we're actually maintaining, which kind of fall on two sides of this boundary. And I've wondered if maybe we do need a developer tools working group, but I don't know if there's anybody looking at those things super actively right now at all.
Yeah.
It's hard to say, and I don't feel plugged in enough to try and lead such an effort myself. I mean, I've already got two working groups going on. It takes up enough time.
But looking for an owner.
Yeah, I mean, I know that Open Robotics has taken maintenance of Colcon, but it was originally a Dirk Thomas project, and he, since leaving Open Robotics, has not been super active on the ROS community. He's got other things to do at his new job. So we are getting some updates in here. But I think that it's a quiet project. I don't have a good answer, but that's my understanding of the situation. It would probably be nice to have a channel for the community to talk about these things, but right now I think our best bet is just discourse or issue conversations rather than live. But we could also we could talk about those things here. I guess my point was, I don't know if we have much expertise in here, but it's probably an okay spot for the conversation. And maybe if you notify discourse ahead of time that we're going to talk about that, then we could get some people who are more familiar with this code base in here to talk about it. Like, I know
I don't have any particular thoughts. I was just sort of curious where that falls, but
I mean, it is nice to have these public forums for things. It makes it feel a little bit like a proper distributed open source project where it's easier to get involved. Whereas if it's like, oh, I don't know, someone at Open Robotics knows about that, then it kind of feels like you're just trying to edge in on someone else's private project.
Yeah.
That's all I have to say about that. Okay, I don't know if we had any action items from last time, so I don't think there's anything to review there. I'm going to add to the template because I did this in the other working group, which is start meeting recording. It's a good reminder to self. I don't always remember to do it. Right. Then I also don't think we have any open PRs in the community repository, so we can just get straight into it then. Jeff, I see that you've added an item here. Do you want to elaborate on the question?
Yep. So last meeting a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about the functionality for reading multiple bag files in a merged way. So taking multiple bag files and then interleaving the data based on timestamps to produce a single output stream. And basically, the one of the foundational aspects of bag conversion for bag merging. There was some discussion about whether to implement it directly in the reader class and change the reader class API, or to implement it as a separate class aggregating readers together. And so the conclusion of that was, well, not so much a conclusion, but a decision to try out both and see what they look like. And then we can make a decision about which approach to go forward with. So I've got some very extremely rough prototypes in these two branches here on my fork. The first one is converting the reader class into a multiple bag reader, and the second one is similar. It's sort of taking the separate aggregator approach, but I also did some work to define interfaces separate from the base reader interface for different aspects of reading in order to get around the problems of the current reader interface not really being suited to multiple bag files at once. And so I think if you look at the first diff, you go down to, where's the file jump thing gone?
This one's the one where you've added the new functionality to the existing reader class so that we can read multiple files, right?
Yeah, which obviously required changing the API of the existing reader class to work with multiple bag files as well. Mm-hmm. It's not great in terms of what it turned out. I mean, it works, but the changes to the class's API, some things just don't really work that well.
Yeah, I was looking at the header here and I noticed like get implementation handle. Whoops, you gotta just choose the first one.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't have a solution for that, so that was the hack to get it to compile, basically. Mm-hmm. There's problems like that in it. The other diff is much more complex. It doesn't have any of the actual functionality in it yet because I need to refactor that from the first diff into it.
I see.
But it does have, if you look into reader interfaces, you'll see a bunch of headers. There's one for the base reader interface. So I decided that a base reader is basically an object that can read from a bag file. So it has next, read next, and get all topics and types. So those are the three fundamental aspects of three fundamental methods of a reader, I decided. Every reader has to be able to do those. Otherwise, it's not a reader if it can't do them. Mm-hmm. And separate from that, there's an interface for filtered bags, filtered readers, where you can have a couple of functions for setting filter and resetting filter. There's an interface for metadata, so you can read the metadata of a bag. There's an interface for multiple bag opener, which is something that I'm actually going to get rid of because it didn't really work out the way I thought it would, and single bag opener. One change I made was to move to
Oh, and
What's
this
it
would
called?
have the overrides of all of these other interfaces. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So one change I made was to move to RTAI rather than having a separate open and close methods. When you construct a bag reader, it opens the bag file. When you destruct it, it closes it. Just because I think it makes the API a bit cleaner, but I'm not tied to that. I
Okay, so
can
that was
change
the
it back.
change that you made in the sequential reader here.
Yeah,
Was wait, am I in the header? Okay, so this would have been in the actual functionality file. Oh, you haven't done the functionality. You've just got
I
this
haven't
as
done
an
the
API
functionality for this
proposal.
one yet.
Okay.
Yeah, but
So the idea
the
would
functionality is
be,
going to be basically the same as the changes to the reader class in the other
yeah,
diff. So I'm more interested in the interfaces here. This is what the objects are going to look like, what the inheritance tree is going to look like. And if you look at
okay,
the sequential reader, you can see what the inheritance is going to look like. So this is inheriting the base reader interface because it needs to be a base reader. It also inherits the single bag opener interface, the metadata reader interface, and the filtered reader interface. Um, I'm kind of not married to the single bag opener interface thing. It doesn't really work out the way
yeah.
I thought it would because
And I
it's
didn't see
basically,
any functions on it, so I
yeah,
don't have a
it's
sense
just a
of what that is
constructor.
for. Yeah.
Yeah, that was before I shifted to RTAI, and now that we're using RTAI in this diff, it kind of doesn't make any sense anymore. So I'm quite happy to get rid of that one. But you can see that if you go up to just above that, you'll see the merged reader, which is sort of like an aggregate version. Um,
Wait,
and you can see that
wait,
one.
are we talking about our AII?
Sorry, yeah.
Okay, just making
Run.
sure I'm not confused. Okay,
Yeah. Sorry, it's very late.
I
Uh,
understand.
um, yeah, getting confused with runtime type identification. Um, so the merged reader, you can see doesn't have, for example, the metadata reader interface because that doesn't make much sense for a merged reader because it's metadata for a single bag, for example. It doesn't have the filtered reader interface, but it does have the base functions of a reader in terms of has next, read next, get all topics and types. And
Okay.
because these are both base readers, you can use them interchangeably for reading from bags.
Mm-hmm.
But the
So you have to initialize them.
sequential reader is capable of having filters set and metadata read from it. And then the idea is that you would construct a bunch of sequential readers and you'd pass them into an aggregate reader, and then that aggregate reader would be your base reader implementation that you pass to the actual reader class, to the facade for that.
Yeah, I think that this makes sense overall. I would have like smaller questions, but maybe we should get into that in the actual review. I don't want to like on a high level. I think that it makes sense that this approach is a little bit cleaner
Yeah,
than the
that's my
other
feeling.
one.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit confused about whether the filtered reader interface needs to be separate than the base reader interface because I think we want to be able to set filters on any reader that can read messages. But
Well, my concern there was that you may want to set different filters on different bag files for
ah,
your aggregate reader.
that's possibly, let's see. So it's possibly difficult to configure when invoking from the command line, but that's not an argument against having the feature. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, that makes
The command line that would be pretty
sense.
nasty, yes, but it doesn't mean you can't do it for the API.
But regardless, being able to set a different filter for every sequential reader is fine, um, because you're constructing a bunch of sequential readers which could have their own filters from the base reader interface and pass that to the aggregate reader.
Yeah.
I guess then the question is, could you or would you want to put a global filter on the aggregate reader, or are you trying to separate that out so that you just can't? You're trying to separate that out so you can't call that function. Instead, you would have to do it on all of the individual readers.
Yeah. I feel that it's cleaner that if you want to have the same filter on
Okay.
every reader that's aggregated, you would do it individually.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, it's a simple loop where you construct them.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that I agree with this approach. And I mean, anybody have any major concerns top level about this for simultaneously reading multiple separate ROS2 bags?
So my only concern here is the reader facade. It still has methods for things like get metadata, and these aren't going to work with an aggregate reader. So my feeling is that we're better off getting rid of the facade and just working directly with base reader pointers.
Yeah, I can't remember right now why the reader facade exists as opposed to the implementation. I mean, we do have clearly multiple implementations,
Yeah.
but we could be using polymorphism to just pass around the base interfaces we care about rather
Yeah.
than this thing. I wish Karsten was on the call because I wasn't there for
Yeah.
the early development, so I've just gotten familiar with what is here and don't always have an answer for why it was built that way in the first place.
Yeah.
Um,
I feel that with these interfaces in place, we wouldn't need the facade anymore, and that we could work with the base reader interface pointers directly and typecast them to filtered reader or metadata run as necessary, and let the type system tell us when we're doing it wrong.
yeah. I mean, we do have a wrapper for this reader facade for Python, for example. We could probably still just pass a
I
pointer to the
think,
base interface instead.
yeah, I mean, the Python code would probably have to do a little bit more. So the C code for Python would have to do a little bit more, I think, but
Yeah,
there's no reason why it wouldn't work.
yeah, I agree.
I just feel that trying to cram the aggregate reader into the existing facade is not going to work because
Well,
doesn't have a bunch of the methods that are required, whereas the basic reader functionality, which is
so
just reading.
what are the functions that are a problem here? Open and close kind of go away as a problem if we're considering this to be
Yep.
resource allocation is initialization. Do it in the constructor and
Yep.
destructor. Then has next and read next are all good, right?
Yep. Has
Get
next, read
metadata
next. So get
is
metadata is gone from it.
yeah,
So the aggregate reader won't support get metadata or the um, set filter, reset filter, and get implementation handle. Okay, so get implementation handle will be fine because it'll return the aggregate reader, which is okay because there's only one aggregate reader. But the filter, two filter methods, and get metadata wouldn't work.
yeah. So we
I
are
guess
right now.
if you don't call them, then it would be okay. I
Yeah,
guess.
that's true.
Yeah. And then if you call them, then it would tell you can't do that on an aggregate reader.
Yeah, I mean, I almost think we could implement this set filter, reset filter, and have it just iterate over its internal readers as necessary.
We could, but
Um,
then it kind of defies the point and defies the way it's currently done in aggregate reader. So we'd have to do aggregate reader
well,
would
it
have to
would be
provide those
a
interfaces.
yeah, it would be a I guess I'd call it like a global override. So you would
Yeah.
be just overwriting whatever the individual readers had initially set as the filter, and I think that that's probably okay as long as we document that behavior. Like this will
Yeah.
overwrite any filters already set on the sub readers. Um,
Yeah. I think it's technically doable. I feel that
yeah,
it muddies the interface a bit.
it's yeah, possibly true.
I'm not opposed to doing it if it's necessary.
Well, I'm just trying to think through this.
Yeah.
Like we do have this facade, and it kind of is. I mean,
Well, it
this
works.
and the player is going to be similar, right? In that
Yeah.
it is. sorry, the player, which calls the reader, but also the recorder, which is the writer. Is there a base writer the same way? Yes, there
Not
is.
yet. Oh, there is a base writer, yeah, but
Yeah, sorry, a writer facade. So both of these right now are as close as you get to the core ROS-Beg2 interface. So I'm hesitant to delete them entirely.
Yeah, it's
It's
a
just
major change in the API.
Yeah, it's a major change in the API. That's not necessarily something we have to avoid, but it's something I just want to feel cautious about before we make any decision like that.
Yeah.
Guys,
Well,
I have a guess that the reader implementation exists just for the sake of unit testing. So you can pass a mock reader to beta unit test to write wrappers. Yeah.
but that's easy. You can still do that even if we're just working directly with base reader pointers.
I'm not sure that it will be the same.
Yeah, let's see. So right now it does create reader, which creates a thing.
Yeah, very often we create mock reader, which is not real reader, which is really don't read from storage. It's just mocking some functions. And
I mean, you could just create a mock interface that inherits from the interface that you're testing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but there's going to be a lot of changes.
It might very well be, yes. Which is another part of why it's maybe better to find an alternative to deleting this. I mean, I'm wondering if it's necessary. Like, maybe instead of the full drastic change of deleting it, maybe all we really need. Let's see. So we're in the reader. Get next has next. Maybe all we really need is to somehow modify or get rid of this get metadata and this get implementation handle method. If we modified those two, which make less sense given the possibility of reading multiple bags, we don't have to delete this interface. Most of the testing infrastructure doesn't have to change. The core API stays the same, and we've just removed two of the functions within it. I feel like that would be better.
But how we will replace those functions like get metadata for reader?
Well, I'm not sure. Just talking through it. Because right now, I don't see it actually used anywhere except in tests. Okay, so the question is this test?
Like visitor pattern, you can create like meta function get metadata, which will accept a parameter as parameter instance of the reader class, and will be not aggregated, just simple reader, and will return get metadata from this reader.
Yeah, I mean, I think it does make sense to have some understanding of an aggregated metadata. What problem did we run into with that, Jeff, of how it would be difficult to aggregate metadata across the multiple bags? Or was there any logical inconsistency, or was it just slightly tricky?
I think this is logical. The timestamp start from that it's starting length of the bag, so maybe it's something specific for each bag how you will aggregate it.
Let's see. Storage identifier was maybe a problem when you have multiple different storage inputs. Relative file paths is kind of okay, although ordering's difficult. Total duration is computable. Starting time, total message count, topic information. Yeah, so there are a few of these that are specific to one bag.
So actually, starting time, we can take earliest one from multiple bags.
It's
possible to aggregate.
Yeah, so yes, think that like these ones at the end here are the ones that are easy to aggregate between multiple input bags. This one, you could just list all of the relative file paths from all of the bags, but the ordering is maybe weird. It might not have meaning given that, but maybe it's okay in that case. So I'm just gonna say medium, and then yeah, we got easy, medium, and these ones are really specific to a single bag. But we could set them to some null value. You could possibly say like equals, I don't know, NA or unknown. And then the output bag will have a single, or if you're writing to a bag as part of this feature, you would have a single identifier that would go into the metadata for the output. But the input would have, oh, you could even just say, I don't know, mixed, and have that be a special case, I guess, for all of these.
Yeah, possible.
Yeah. I don't see it being a showstopper, but it is does require a decision to be made about the logic. There's not a clear answer.
Sorry, I dropped off. My Wi-Fi failed for some reason.
Okay, I was wondering.
Yeah. That's why
okay, so you're back. Where did you lose us? Do you remember?
About a couple of minutes ago. I was just saying that I think that one possible approach is to get rid of assume that reader implementations should be configured directly rather than via the reader facade. So that would mean you'd remove from the facade, you would remove the get metadata method, the open method, the close method, and potentially the filter methods, and they leave the facade to be the simple stuff for reading bags.
Just pass it some readers and then.
Yeah, so say that the readers must be configured before they're passed to the reader facade. And so it's not the responsibility of the facade to handle the configuration anymore. That means you can simplify the facade a bit, get rid of.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I don't see any specific reason why we need the open API to exist.
We need open just for the sake of multiple times operating with reader. So we would like to have the same instance and reopen it, close, and open it multiple times when we do replay in loop.
Yeah. So yeah, Jeff, I really don't think we have to get rid of all of these APIs here because it is possible to aggregate the metadata, at least in some. So that was the conversation we were having while you were offline, was forget metadata. And I was taking a look at the metadata here where some of this is really easy to aggregate. This relative file paths, we can just give them a list of all of the file paths between things.
Yeah.
And then we could possibly, for these ones, just have a value that's not meaningful, but is a placeholder.
Right.
Yeah. For this case.
That could work.
Yeah. Because those are the fields that don't make sense
right.
when you've got multiple bags. But it could, yeah, just be a placeholder value there. The one, yeah, even then, set filter, reset filter, these could be global overrides, which then you just have to be careful to, not even be careful, just don't call that if you want to have separate filters on the different writers that you've configured.
Right.
And I guess one possible thing there is if you want to have the filter set differently across replays of the same bag, then yeah, so that's the one thing with the RAI approach is you would have to deconstruct and reconstruct the object to replay that individual bag when we're looping, for example. And right now that wouldn't be possible within this or within the player, I guess, because we call open at the end of the loop or close at the end of the loop, and then let's see.
Could you pass a reference to the object around?
I don't know if that solved the problem that we need open and close so that we can open it at the beginning of the loop and then reopen it to loop play back again. Well, whereas
for that I would replace open and close with
I would emphasize that I have a feature jump in work in progress, and I'm going to use, I have draft implementation, I'm going to use open and close more often. So I need to reread back from the scratch from the beginning multiple times.
Michael, I think that you don't want to do that for jump. Did you see my comment on the?
Yeah, I know, but it's kind of current implementation. It depends how it will be implemented. We'll see.
Yeah,
current implementation rely on it.
Yeah, but realistically, we don't want to be, closing and then reopening the bag every time that we want to change the timing, because that'll, I assume, be very slow as an implementation.
Yeah. Okay, just fair warning about this.
For open and close is to get rid of them and replace them with a reopen method.
Yeah, or a reset back to beginning. So, yeah, because that's I think that's all we really use it for here is as a reset.
Call reopen, and it will internally do whatever processing is necessary to make it look as if the bag has just been opened. And that could possibly allow optimization for different formats. Like maybe you just need to rewrite a file pointer, for example.
I think that makes sense.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
You okay there? You losing your connection again?
Stupid network.
I can still hear you. You still there, Jeff? No, I guess not. Well, yeah, I mean, I think reopen would still do the thing that you need it to do for the current naive jump implementation, right, Michael?
Yes, I think so.
Yeah,
we can replace two of them to one.
Yeah, and I assume this would probably go in after your feature, so you could do that first, and then we can refactor as necessary. And if reopen does the same thing as close open does now.
It will be just looks a little bit odd when you see and try in for loop like here in do, and the first time you see it, it's like reopen. Okay, why is reopen? We haven't opened it yet, and it's already reopened. It's a little bit confusion, but it's okay.
I mean, I might call it reset rather than reopen.
Yeah, it's more generic reset. We already probably have reset, not?
Well, you have to be careful. Yeah, because it's method on the smart pointers.
We already had it, and I pushed to rename it. Really.
Yeah, I mean, go back to beginning or go back to initial state, but those are long names.
It's reopen. It's okay.
Yeah.
I dropped off again.
Yeah, we saw.
I've switched to my cell phone now. Maybe be a bit more stable. Obviously, my house's Wi-Fi is broken. I was saying that we could delete open and close and replace them with a reopen method.
Yeah, and we were talking about that a little bit while you're offline, and I think that's okay. As long as we document carefully that construction is opening, and so reopen can be called after construction, and it is logically consistent.
I think an advantage of that is it offers a potential optimization for some bag formats, because you may only need to do something like rewrite a file pointer to make it look like it's been reopened. Whereas if you do close and then open, you may have to do a whole bunch of resource allocation and so on.
Yeah, like I think in SQLite, I think we can just reset a query rather than close and open the database.
Can you maybe highlight again rationals to remove close? What it will give us if you remove close? What advantages?
It just allows us to control the lifespan of the, or we don't have to remember to call open after we create the object that's already open. Is really the main thing. Is it simplifies the reading interface from construct get next message. You don't have to do anything in between.
But are we doing something in between?
Well, you have to
Just
call
open.
you have to call open in between. And right now it's it's
But if you will
configuration is
come,
split.
yeah, but if
Yeah,
you'll
you
come
could.
once, then you will still have to call reopen anyway, right?
Yes, but you don't have to pass any arguments to reopen.
Oh, arguments.
Yeah, at the moment you pass the URI for the file to open instead of the constructor, which
Okay,
is also
I
strange.
got your point. I got your point.
Yeah, that's the main concern. It's just the split
Okay,
between the because the reader implementation, I believe, we go to this actually is a little bit weird that you have. What do you have? Oh, you've got storage options and converter options on this open interface, but um,
Yeah, there are two open, if you look at the reader header, there's two open functions, one that just takes the URI and produces the storage options itself,
oh,
and
and
calls the other one, which has,
this one's
and so
considered deprecated.
okay.
But we don't have any. I don't think we have documentation on that. But we added converter storage options later, and this one was the original API, and we probably should have said like, just slash deprecated, however you mark that here.
Yeah.
Uh, so then the
not
question
sure.
is, yeah,
Need to search. Yeah.
this is the one that we really want. That we
Yeah,
should
so
take.
those storage options, converter options go to the constructor in one of the forks that I have.
Yeah, I mean, I think
And
that
so the
makes
sequential
sense.
reader, yeah, sequential reader receives them in its constructor as the first two arguments, and then it does all its opening stuff from the constructor.
So I think that's fine as an approach. You reopen. In which case,
Yeah.
this reader facade could just have reopen, no close, has next, read next, get metadata, get topics and types. I think even the set filter's fine as a first step. If we want to
Yeah.
reconsider it, that's okay. Like it would
Yeah.
be a pretty simple implementation. That's a few lines of code, so it won't be hard to review. Of like
Yeah,
for
I mean,
you.
as a way of avoiding too much change in the API, it's perfectly fine
Yeah,
just to leave it
I
there.
think I would prefer to take the slightly more incremental approach here. We do have
Yeah.
almost a year until Humble, so we have time to use the rolling version and see whether we like or dislike that. The one
Yeah.
thing is get implementation handle. I'm not entirely sure about how to replace that right now.
That would work okay because the aggregate reader would be the only implementation that this one directly holds.
I see. So
Yeah.
that would give you what you need then.
Yeah. And then
Okay.
if you want to get the child readers, the aggregate reader class would have its own method, which doesn't come from any other interface,
So
which
only
will
if
give
you
you
were
access
working with
to.
that directly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. I think that I have a pretty good handle of all the problems that I need to solve now.
Yep.
So I can go ahead with that split interface and work on that.
Great. That sounds awesome. I'm happy we're making progress on this. This is going to be really useful for a big feature set.
Yeah.
Michael, do you need any? This is just me now thinking about major features on ROS 2. Michael, do you need any reviews right now that I haven't been doing?
Not at the moment, but I have a proposal to fix some CI regressions. So maybe I will do today fix, and maybe if you will review early next week or today, it will be fine.
Or later today if it's up before
Yeah.
the end of the day. Yeah. I will. Yeah, happy to do that. Just ping me directly.
Yeah, I just finished analysis last night, so it's about
Okay.
some synchronization problem.
Great. And then we now have. Maybe I should take some notes. Where's my browser? That's okay. Discuss the aggregate Here, same CI regression. This on up. And then I have a member of my team who has been in this meeting before but isn't here today. Sonia is working on the Seek API for storage implementations. And I think she has an implementation working, but it still needs testing. So we'll, I think, see that next week as a review.
We'll
and that should be really useful as a new API for storage.
Yeah, my plan was to make a draft with my implementation, which is really hacky workaround with open, close, back, and trying to search and write unit test. And then as soon as probably your implementation for Seek API will be ready from storage, maybe switch to those one. And maybe
I think we can.
will not go.
I think I'd like to make progress. We can merge with what you've got if it works, and then we can replace it once we have something to replace that portion of the logic with. And then I'm working on right now the sleep for. So I'm working on simulated time. Use sim. Time. So this is being able to listen to the clock topic to drive playback time. And in order to implement that, I'm working on functionality in RCL CPP right now to add a sleep until function to the ROS clock so that we can use the existing time source functionality to do that.
Okay.
So I'm working on that prerequisite logic. And this is a lot of this, these three things here get us towards that advanced playback control story that we defined before Galactic. And there were just a few last stories that didn't get finished. And it's because they were the much more complex ones. So I'm glad we're making that progress. I think we will have that, long before the Humble release, and we can have some testing on it and have that feature set fully functional. Another thing that's going on that I wanted to bring up is in the middleware working group meeting on Wednesday morning, or on Wednesday, or whatever time zone you're in, we talked about being able to get message definitions on the wire for ROS2. And here we want to use those to store them in the bags. That's been an ongoing conversation. So we have an initial conversation in the ROS2 core about that, but we don't have any implementation yet. So I'm thinking about doing some prototypes or some design docs around that. Don't have anything concrete to show yet, but just wanted to share that we took some notes from the middleware group.
Yeah, but as far as I understand, it's two different conceptual approach. One of them to rely to X types, metadata, and built-in DDS information. Another one which is trying to add one more service which will provide this information from Node by request.
Yeah, I think we need to maybe prototype both approaches and see which one works better. Yeah, I don't really know, because right now, the X types will give you the IDL information, which is it's a direct mapping from the dot message to IDL, but I don't know if you can reverse that transformation. It might be lossy, so that might not be good enough, but maybe it is. I'm not sure. That's why I just need to try it out.
The concern was what if not DDS, right? Or if it's transport layer. Not sure whether it's applicable to consider if it's not DDS, because it's tightly coupled with DDS, everything like this is we are talking about type support. It's kind of DDS.
Possibly we could do, if it's easier, we could do an implementation that only supports DDS-based implementations, and that would at least be helpful for a lot of users. But I agree. It'd be nicer to get the dot message definition. We might be able to pass that as user data on the discovery traffic. Yeah, it just needs investigation. Anybody who's interested, I'm going to start a thread on the WebTools working group mailing list about it. And Adrian had asked, you sent me an email and I forgot to respond to it yesterday, whether there was a mailing list for this working group, and I haven't set one up properly.
All right.
We hadn't really needed it, or at least maybe we did need it and we just didn't use
You
it.
used to use Element for communication, right?
What's that?
Wouldn't it be
used to
better to
use
use a category and
chat.
force?
Yeah, we do use Discourse, and we have the chat room as well.
I was more than just discussion. I was mostly looking for an easy way to subscribe to just the calendar invite for this thing and not all of the ROS working group.
Gotcha. I don't think we have that. Let's see. So if I look at the...
Go back to that list you had. I thought I said something about ROS.
You go to the governance page.
Yeah, my groups.
What's
ROS tooling working group invites. Oh, it does have members. And it seems like a pretty reasonable group. I assume I can't remove
and I'm
people.
in it. All right. I guess just the calendar invite.
If you go to the ROS2 governance page where it lists all the working groups, it does list the Google group for getting invites to the working group events. And you just need to make sure that you include that invite that Google group address in any calendar events. So
yeah, I have that, but now I have just like now there's like 24 calendar invites across my calendar for a whole bunch of different ones.
So this tooling one, I'm actually not.
That means you need to add it to the calendar events for the tooling working group meetings.
Yeah.
If you add it as an invitee.
Right now it's only set to invite ROS2 working groups. So let me add this new guest. And then I say for this and following events. Okay, and send. I think that should solve the problem. Okay, if that was the thing, Adrian, then I think you're solved now. You should have gotten a new invite to the ROS tooling working group invites one.
I'll look out for it.
Cool.
Emerson, also just on the topic of implementing that message definitions thing.
Yep.
I think we mentioned yesterday, but John on our team is probably willing to help out there too. He's just out this week, so if you start a thread somewhere, he can.
Yeah, I was thinking about sending it out to the WebTools working group email address. I didn't get around to it yesterday, but.
Okay.
So I'll send that out right now after this meeting. That way it's out and we can coordinate whoever wants to help. It probably doesn't hurt to just have that conversation out in front of everybody. They can always filter our emails if they want, right? Yeah, great. Okay, and we've even got a new conversation from like last week. I guess I missed this. Okay, yeah. So I'm gonna, there we go, new conversation. I have it up in front of me. And we'll coordinate on there. And anybody who's on this call who wants to get involved, maybe, I don't know, probably joining that mailing list is overkill, but let me know and then we can start a side thread or something, or I can include you just on that thread. Other than that, is there anything that we should talk about before we get going? Are there any major feature sets that we're not discussing right now? We've got this portion is talking about the advanced playback API. We've got the aggregate reader is part of a larger project for sort of the arbitrary rewriting of bags, which includes splitting, merging, and conversion for some definitions of conversion. We've got message definitions. I think that there's a conversation to be had about compatibility, like forward compatibility of ROS bags, figuring out a way to ensure that bags we write in, say, Humble are playable in Foxy, which was a feature of ROS 1 that I've been informed was useful for people. I personally didn't have that experience because I was mostly using internal bags, but I'm not sure how to ensure that, but that's something maybe we can just have on our minds at the moment. I think we have enough other things going on to pay attention to.
Is the work on the aggregate reader basically making the issue that I had created a while ago on the bag converter basically null?
Basically, it covers some number of the definitions of conversion, but not necessarily all of them. So I think we need to be more precise in that issue. Maybe we want to close it and reopen multiple slightly more directed issues, because what it's part of work that will let us do splitting, storage format changing, merging, compression format changing.
Yes, it's basically the start of a conversion pipeline.
Yes, exactly. There are possibly other definitions of conversion that it won't cover, but I think we just need to be more specific about those. I can't think of what they are right now.
Okay, I can go and close the issue then.
All right. Yeah, I mean, that was super useful in helping us start the conversation and clarify a lot of the ideas around it.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that. I didn't really see any activity on it.
Like, no, there hasn't been in a while.
So...
That was that was the beginning of the conversation.
Is there an issue that I can reference when closing this so that people that come to this later on know that the issue has been superseded by a different one?
Good question. Let's find out. Man, I'd really like to pull this issue count down.
I'm just about to reduce it by 1.
That's a good start. Let's see. So, like, merge. Stores. Nope. Join or stitch together multiple ROS bags. Yeah, this one I think is.
The issue that I'm referring to is the issue number 717.
Yeah. So this is directed at you, Jeff. If and when you have a PR, it only will do this once. Yeah, so both of these issues are notable for its functionality. So this is part of. This is why I say like some of the definitions of next to these issues. So we've got 668 for merging, splitting is 599. And then we've got did you say 727?
717. 717.
717, okay. So this converter then, yeah, it'll cover this. This portion isn't really something we need to do specifically, or it already is that. Into any valid ROS-Beg2 format. Yeah, so this doesn't do exactly all of these things, but it'll do a lot of it. So maybe we need to. I don't know if we have an issue open for bag rewriter specifically.
The purpose of the neutral intermediary format was basically so that you didn't have to write a converter from any version to any other version. You just had to write a converter to and from the neutral format.
Yeah. But that neutral format is actually like a ROS2 serialized bag message, so we already have it.
Yeah.
I think was the conclusion.
I think basically you would read a message and that would give it to you in the serialized bag message format, and then you would write a message in whatever new format you want to write it in.
Yeah, I think I'm going to make a new issue for the generic bag rewriter, unless we want to. I think it might make sense to just, note this. Oops. But start a new conversation because that's a little overloaded. Generic bags to bags rewriter. And API pipeline possibly hook up to CLI that takes in any number of bags outputs, possibly different ROS bags using any storage options, storage, etc. Options for all inputs and outputs. Something like that. This is the larger project, I think. So related issues, I'm going to say this is related to 717. Covers much of the functionality discussed in that isn't stuff. Then we've got joining or stitching. And as we get to these individual things, we can close out those sub issues. See what that was. 688. The one I already mentioned. Okay, so it was 599. Whoops. Yeah. Description. At least we'll have this here. This is less complete than it could be. But at the moment, I don't know if I can assign you in the org. I'm assigning you, Jeff, for now.
Okay.
I don't know if you don't necessarily have to finish everything, but that way your name's on it.
That works for me.
Okay. And if you need, I think we'll definitely want to just leave it to you for getting this first portion out.
Yep.
But then we could pull in more people to do some of the follow-up issues as we get there. Okay.
That's fine with me.
Yep. I think we're in a good spot. We're making progress. One note I wanted to make on that is I would very much appreciate it if you could add doc strings to all APIs that you create, at least all the public ones. I'm going to start running the documentation tool on ROSBag 2 and see where we're missing documentation. Definitely some of the interfaces are very under-documented, which makes it unclear why they exist or how exactly they're meant to be used. So as we create new ones.
Sure, will do.
Cool. Okay.
Emerson, I would like to raise maybe a question. Can we maybe somehow agree to what style to use when documenting like C++ or C style when using Doxygen documentation? Because I see a proposal, I would promote proposal to use C++ for new descriptions, for new files, if it's not documented. If it's already a lot of documentations happened in C style to preserve the C style, but if it's entirely new
You mean like this
file,
is the C style?
yeah, it's highly undesirable to have it really, because it's better to sustain and support C++ style. It's much easier. But if your file already has this, most of them just keep it in this file. But if it's completely new, try to use C++ really.
What is the C++ style?
It's just 3 backslashes.
Okay.
I thought 3 backslashes was just the brief.
No, it's not just comment. You can find somewhere in player class, for example, if you open player. I believe I put there.
Yeah. So my understanding is that
it's not just comment. It's also
like this.
Yeah, like this one. It's much easier. You see, it's just three slashes, and you go forward. You don't need to care about close and open, whether it's aligned or not. You just 3 slashes and go. 3 slashes and go. Whatever you want to write.
I don't have a strong opinion about this. I definitely think we should make it consistent within a file. But if we want to do this
consistent
way
in
for
one
new
file,
files,
but if it's new, well, I would kind of encourage people to use this new 3 slashes style.
Okay. I guess it's. Why is it better? I don't actually know. I don't see a difference.
Take a look. It's much easier to align. So with alignment,
I guess you have one fewer
close
line.
and open. Yeah, no extra space before the star. It's just really easy to handle. Don't need to think about alignment or about that is no close and or open. It's just straightforward. It's more compact also.
Yeah, that's fine. We can aim for this for new files.
By the way, if anybody use C-line, if you will just type 3 slashes and enter, it will actually pop up snippet for this comment automatically. You don't need to write even brief details, so it will return. It will automatically insert all the stuff, boilerplate stuff.
Great.
It's easy in C-line. Just 3 slashes and enter.
I believe that Visual Studio Code also supports this, as well as the original block comment style.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that's fine. It is decided. We will aim for this style for new files.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. We're a little over time. Anything else we need to talk about before we go? Yes, I can. Okay, great.
Good.
Box strings for new files. Okay, thanks everyone. I will see you again the next time. We don't need a breakout meeting next week, right? Don't think so. And then the next, yeah, the following meeting would be on the 13th. You know what? I'm not going. Oh no, that's okay. I'll be here. I'm gone the following Friday, so we're all set. Cool. Next meeting on August 13, and I'll see you all then. Thanks a lot.
See you later.
Yep, have a good one.
Take care.
Have a good weekend. Bye.